Co-Opinions. I'm your host, Josh, and today we have Chris.
Yo, Josh.
And Nick.
Hey, guys.
So today we're going to do a post-mortem of both Mighty No. 9 and Xenoblade Chronicles X, but first we'll go around and talk about any small news that jumped out at us and what we've been playing this last week. Chris, why don't you go first?
Well, first off, what I've been playing this past week, I recently finished I Am Setsuna.
I saw you platinumed that, actually.
Yes, the first game I've ever platinumed.
Good for you.
Which is really exciting. I've never really been much of a trophy hunter, despite the fact that with games like this, in my past, I would actively go out of my way to make a game more challenging and try to call my own quote-unquote achievements. Mm-hmm. But when games actually had it roll out, I never did them. And now I finally done one. And it was a fun experience. I did like the game. Anything I could say about the game could be summed up in one scene, where if you go through what is called like the secret area where you encounter the developer's room, and they mentioned, I Am Setsuna. It's not a perfect game, but it's not a bad game.
Well, that's surprisingly humble, yeah. I linked you that story earlier today, that rumor.
Yes, about the successor that they'd be working on.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it because I think that's a great chance for Tokyo RPG and Square Enix to do another old school RPG and address the issues that I had with I Am Setsuna, which, one more thing I want to mention. Probably the biggest thing for me, they said it's supposed to be like Chrono Trigger. They should have just called this game Chrono Trigger 3.
I about to say, from all the pictures I saw, you used X Attack at one point, don't you? That's one of...
You have numerous callbacks. They have single text, dual text, and triple text that have referenced directly to Chrono Trigger using the same names. This is spoilers so if you're playing it and you don't want to hear, milk yourself, but they reference characters. They reference the legendary Frog Knight, which is Frog. There's a weapon called Luca's Hammer, which if you play Chrono Trigger, you know when Luca does a melee attack, she whacks with her hammer instead of with the gun. Mm-hmm. And at least to me, I could see a potential argument. This is a theory I have, that the game takes place between 12,000 BC and 600 AD. Because in Chrono Trigger 12,000 BC, right after the fall of Zeal, the world cools off. It's a snow and barren wasteland. I Am Setsuna takes place in a snowy, barren wasteland with all these references to Chrono Trigger. But that's like 12,000 plus years where nothing is mentioned in the main game. What happens? This could easily fit in as a side story.
So is that Chris's headcanon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Anything else about things you've been playing? We got some general news stories we can talk about.
Just other things I'm playing. I've also been playing Odin Sphere, which I know you two have thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm getting there. I'm liking it. I'm also playing Zero Time Dilemma, which Nick made a shout out about last time, which very funny about the coin toss at the beginning of the game.
I saw you had the thing about the coin toss.
And another slight spoiler, when you do the missions and the puzzles, you have to input an answer. Like, who was the killer? Who trapped you here? And every time I've been putting the dog's name in on the off chance that they have an Easter egg where the dog was the guy who did it. Yes, a throwback to, Silent Hill 2?
Silent Hill 2.
That's right, man.
I'm about to say, good callback. Sounds great. How about you, Nick? What have you been playing?
Lately, the main thing I've been playing is Project X Zone 2. That's continued to be fun. I was telling Josh, they did some nice stuff for the tactical RPG thing to kind of try and switch up the formula and not have it just be, hey, kill all of the enemies. One of the recent maps had essentially defending a central position point, and that switched it up, and it kind of forced you to use some multiple attacks because of the way that you had to divide your forces to kind of deal with the incoming tide. I also enjoyed whenever they brought back Sigma. It was just like this fun set. It was almost like the scene in Anchorman 2 where you have the car careening and it's like, oh yeah, let's just turn on the fryer over here. And let me just open up my little scorpion tank here. And then it's kind of a slapstick scene that plays out where the bowling balls rush everywhere. The scorpions fall out of the cage. The fryer grease everywhere. I thought about this in the Project X Zone 2 because they bring back Sigma. You're in cyberspace and you have Vile just all of a sudden, the protagonists, are talking about how Vile's here. And wait a second, there's also this weird computer virus thing that's here. And there's this major power supply thing. And they're just kind of ticking off all these, wow, what a coincidence. Wow, what a coincidence. All of a sudden, the black computer virus clouds start to cluster together. Then they just form together into Sigma. Chapter 27, Acclamation of Malice. That's what I've been playing recently.
I'm about to say, you've been enjoying that tremendously. I know you've talked about how you've been marginalizing other things that you've considered playing because you're enjoying this that much, which is shocking to me because Project X Zone, that was a marathon of a game for you.
They really tightened it up. Project X Zone clocked in at around 90 hours for me. The main thing there was through the volume of units you had on the map and then the volume of enemies that you had. It just took so long to cycle through the turns. The counters also didn't do as much damage as they do in Project X Zone 2, so you have the ability in the sequel to you have less enemies per map. They tightened up that part of the design instead of just flooding everything out there. And they also made your counters do more damage so that when the enemies are taking their turn, you're also still whittling down the enemy's team instead of just waiting for your turn to go on the offense again.
That sounds like they've tightened that up delightfully. Great to hear. I myself haven't been playing a ton since the last podcast we recorded. I wrapped up the Dead Rising 3 DLC, which... Nah.
It was there!
It was there!
Yay.
I also reconnected with a Game Boy game, believe it or not, when they were shutting down the Nintendo Rewards service. They were selling a bunch of old VC games, and one of them that I picked up was Donkey Kong for the Game Boy. Did you ever play that, Chris?
No, I had not.
It's interesting because it starts off with the original 4 Donkey Kong levels, and not to marginalize Nintendo on this, but you kind of think that's where it's going to end, because why wouldn't it? There are 97 more levels after that. There are 101 levels in this. It's amazing, because it's like a puzzle platformer. It's really well executed. You have to get a key to unlock the door in every level. Nick, you look like you have something you want to add.
I was just going to call out what you said there about having those 4 stages where it was just such a great freak-out moment as a kid. I mean, I got the game for the Game Boy with my family, and it was just, oh yeah, we're going to have Donkey Kong. I guess that's cool. And like you said, you get to the end of that 4th stage, and you're like, yeah, this will be a fun arcade game to play every now and again. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh god, this is like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I'm in Narnia right now.
Yeah, it was amazing. And the level design is surprisingly tight for being a 1994 Game Boy game. It goes pretty snappy as an adult. Levels take less than 3 minutes a pop, but it's a great game to pick up and put down, especially with the Virtual Console save state. So I finished that up this weekend, and I also started Final Fantasy Type 0. Nick has played this. Have you played it, Chris?
I played the intro, probably about an hour's worth, and then I moved on to something else. I forget what.
Into the trash.
I'm about to say, into the void where you belong. This is your home. I was a little worried talking to Nick that I was going to get burnt out on it because he said the story kind of peters around a bit with 13 characters, especially when they had no idea what to do the names. Some of them are named 7, 8, and 9. They didn't even try for a few of these. Then there was Jack, Queen, King, Ace, and then Deuce. Was that what?
Every one of them is just
it's a pun.
Cards.
They're
every
all,
single one.
It's all a pun. And I was a little worried because Nick was saying, yeah, I would do this thing where they leveled up while the system was off, and that was helping me get over some of the burn. And I go, I wonder. And I looked it up, and lo and behold, what you can do is you can set it to automatically level them up while you're away from your system. It's dependent on your system clock.
Yes.
So if you set it forward a year, it bumps you up 5 levels. So if I get to a point, I'm getting everybody a little higher leveled right now, just because right now the gameplay's fun. It doesn't look super engrossing. I'd imagine you could relate to it if you put it down.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of liking it, but...
And I heard it doesn't get better, like story-wise. So, if this is what it takes for me to get through this game, I want to see why it was a big deal. And I'm willing to bet you saw at least a little bit.
There are glimmers of what Final Fantasy could be embedded within Type 0. It was just all wrapped in the cloud of Toriyama.
Yeah, so if what keeps me from getting to the end of it, because I want to round out this whole what Final Fantasy 13 was supposed to be a decade ago package, I kind of have to know. So if getting 5 levels up by kind of cheesing the system's what it takes, that's what I'm going to do. But moving on to completing the whole 13 trilogy, as it were, 15 got pushed back.
Yes, it did.
Supposed to come out late next month. Please understand it won't be out till the end of November. Now,
I really appreciate the explanation that Tabata gave about that, though, essentially saying that, hey, we need to do a day 1 patch for this, and we're concerned about places that aren't going to have the internet to go ahead and download this patch, so we want to make sure everything's on the disc. This is a kind of complaint that gamers have had for a long time, so to see them go ahead and push it back for 2 months to accommodate that, I think that's kind of nice. I'm sure on their side it also helps to go ahead and have World of Final Fantasy come before Final Fantasy 15. I thought that was an interesting release order whenever they had it originally set up.
I'm not too upset about it because it still looks like it's coming out. That's the big thing you'd be concerned about at this stage in the game is you keep pushing it back. But 2 months, we've had 2 sizable demos that have gotten revisions. So not particularly worried about this delay.
It was a non-issue for me, those being delayed. I mean, we've seen games that do this before, and it's only 2 months. It's not like it's getting delayed to an unknown date.
TBA. Yeah.
Exactly.
And there was one other bit of news.
Galgun!
Well, that was trivia right there, but it's entertaining trivia to be sure. So the erotic rail shooter Galgun Double Peace came out, the sequel to a game that was never localized in which you charm women with your pheromone shot, and it made kind of a hubbub because it was rated E for sexual content. Now this was an oversight on the ESRB's point. On one half of the game it says M for mature, on the other half it says rated E for sexual content, but this made enough of a wave that publishers like Devolver were coming out and going, we can't get basic jokes past these guys. How does this get through?
Didn't they know that E stands for erotica?
I'm about to say that's what I always use.
Does that count as an oversight by the ESRB or is it an oversight by the publisher creating the game cases?
They blame the ESRB, I believe.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I'm not sure.
But I think you want to talk about Metal Gear Survive.
That was
the
it.
Survivor.
Who here wants to summarize the basic plot of this cooperative stealth-based game? Does anybody know what the plot is?
Resident Evil had sex with the stealth game?
Kind of, except put a little more Konami zest on it.
So the Silent Hill game that we were supposed to get?
No, that would be good. No. The soldiers at Mother Base between Ground Zero and the Phantom Pain got sucked through a wormhole into a dimension where zombies exist. Awesome.
Time travel makes everything better.
Yeah, buddy. I'm gonna withhold all judgment until we've seen anything. The premise is not encouraging, but maybe it'll be great.
I can understand from a design perspective you saying, hey, let's take the Left 4 Dead kind of co-op shooter thing, but then make it like some sort of stealth game. I can understand, like, on a designer's whiteboard, that seems like an okay idea. But going from that idea to what got revealed, I feel like there were some corruptions of the dream that happened here.
Yeah.
You might say the dream got sucked through a wormhole. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
What I want to know is why does it have the Metal Gear name?
Because that'll sell it. Because if it was just stealth survival, no one would buy that. Now, they put Metal Gear on it. Why was Star Fox Adventures Star Fox Adventures and not Dinosaur Adventure?
Because Dinosaur Planet's not a very interesting title.
There you go. Throw Star Fox in there and boom, now people suddenly bought it. Nick bought it.
I did.
There you go.
Used for $13. It was okay. It was about as average as you get.
It's about what everybody said. But I think that's about good for news for now. Let's go ahead. What do you say we start with Mighty Number 9 so we can get the vitriol out of the way? Chris, I'd like you to take point on this one because, actually, Nick, because you have your whole big list written out, and I know you're more negative than Chris, but I'm probably more negative than both of you.
This is correct.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So for Mighty Number 9, I really feel like as a whole that it was kind of just an average game. It was kind of a 6 of 10, 7 of 10. What I find looking back on playing it is that there were a lot of design attributes that I was appreciative of. One that comes to mind is kind of the learning system and how as you died and as you struggled through the game, then you found yourself getting more and better power-ups. You'd get like the Excel recovery thing to go ahead and be like, you know what, you died to that boss. Here, maybe this will give you that little boost you need to get across the finish line, champ. That helped me some of the time. I also thought that while it did suffer from having a lot of instant death, they were also very generous with the extra lives within the stages. Generally, there were at least 2 extra lives in each stage that I can recall, and sometimes there were 3, and they were usually clustered around those difficult areas that you went through. I liked the recharge of the powers. I thought that was nice. With playing the older Mega Man games, I kind of found that I would be a little bit hesitant to use those early on because I'd always be like, hey, do I need this weapon for the boss at the end of the stage? By having them recharge, I feel like it encouraged you to experiment and try and use those. Speaking of those powers, that was one of the other things. I didn't appreciate this till the end. If you think about it, a lot of variety to those powers. You had 2 melee attacks. Mm-hmm. You had a couple of different ranged ones. Some of those were AoEs, like the Pyro Explosion. Some of those were single shot. You had the electricity one that shot out tethers. I feel like at a core design level for the structure of the game that it did good, and where it failed is with a lot of their implementation. The insta-death that we all know about. One of the other weaknesses was you had that knockback system, and it was kind of like an NBA player who's getting shoved, where they're trying to pretend there's just this crazy foul. You take a hit in Mighty Number 9 where you get thrown back a couple of lengths of your character. That's a pain in the butt. I got knocked into cliffs a couple of times because of that. Look, Josh has this look on his face where he has too. The story was garbage. It was poorly told. It didn't make me excited for an anime whatsoever. I thought it was trying to do this.
Gotta agree with him.
It was trying to do this thing where it was like making these references to, oh, there's this prison, there's this guy who's arrested, and oh, is Dr. White actually faking his identity? I didn't care. I didn't care at all. I don't care about any of them. I was glad when that was over. Poor production values for the ending. It's just like, ta-da, we're playing the Mighty Number 9 theme, here's a little picture, and we're all done. They didn't try and do like a little wrap-up or anything like that. That was weak.
It's over.
Yeah. And also, technical slowdown. That was a big frustration for me in Trinity Stage. I played on the PS4, and when I found in the one section where you're dashing through the air, through the void, I had to just start slowing down, and I died at one point because of that. And when that happened, each time I got to that area. So that's kind of my rundown of the good and the bad. I mean, on the whole, I had an okay time. I'm not in a rush to buy the sequel. If there is, in fact, a sequel, I'm not excited about the franchise.
I would be surprised if there's anything else from Mighty Number 9.
They were hoping to build on the goodwill to the point where they delayed one of the delay announcements because it coincided with this Legend of Red Ash. They waited till that was over. Then less than 6 hours later, hey guys, bad news. That thing you're all worried about, we're delaying it again. Yay. Yeah. But Chris, let's go ahead and hear your positivity. I'm trying to write down notes here, so things I can agree or disagree with. And Nick, you did bring up some points that the exclamation points belie some of the subtle nuances I'm hoping to communicate.
Josh says, lives were dumb.
They were. I did. Chris, go.
That is such a logical statement.
Yep.
Well, first off, Nick, I do have to agree with you. It was a middle-of-the-road game. I will put it at a 6, maybe a 7 on a good day. There were several things I liked about it. Primarily, the actual gameplay was a great throwback to actual Mega Man Classic style. We're talking about the platforming list to go through, timing your jumps, the dodges, the infamous level.
Mighty Number 3?
Yeah.
Yes. Gosh, can't think of the name for life for me. But anyway, Josh knows what I'm talking about.
That's definitely going to be in my cons.
It was a very annoying dash. I'm glad it didn't show up again. But the fact that they had that kind of difficulty was a throwback to Classic Mega Man. Because Classic Mega Man, talking about Mega Man 1, you had to time your jumps hard. Otherwise, you would just fall to your death. And this did a great job of translating that to the new generation.
And I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris. Well, they built on that as well. Like that's something I appreciate too, to your point, is they did throwbacks, but it was still a growth. Through that dash system, I kind of felt like they were taking the Sonic the Hedgehog idea where, hey, if you're good, then you can go ahead and move quicker through things, and trying to graft that onto the Mega Man style run and gun.
Which was something I like too. Mighty Number 6, the airplane, I forget his name
Aki.
too. Avi, Aviator. His level was nice. You could dash through because you could also dash up when the wind was taking you up. And you could still fly through the level doing that. You didn't have to sit there and wait to take platforms. You could just dash back and forth. Like, oh, if you're good, just prove it. Speed run through this. And I thought that was nice. You mentioned about weapon diversity. That was one of my positives. I felt that in the past games, comparing to Mega Man, because that's what it was being compared to, you had your standard pea shooter, and then you had like a stronger pea shooter. And maybe somebody would throw a unique weapon, but it was still just a straight line shot. You didn't have the tethers from Mighty Number 3. You didn't have the ricocheting bullets from Mighty Number 8.
How many shield weapons did we get in each Mega Man game over the years?
Exactly. Something else that I liked, I mentioned it beforehand about the whole learning curve. As you got on in the Mega Man games, they seemed to get easier. And I think it's because of the history of playing those hard level games. The same thing happened in this game. It started out difficult. You died a lot. That was expected. As you got on, it's like, oh, you know what? I'm starting to figure out these tricks. Now I'm flying through levels. And that was something that really changed my opinion. Because when I first played the game, I was like, oh, this is kind of not what I expected. As I got on, I was like, oh, man, I'm actually enjoying this. And by the time I beat the game, this was not as bad as I was making it out to be. I really thought it was supposed to be a big old flaming pile of but it wasn't. What it ended up being was just okay Mega Man clone. There are better ones out there, but this one was a fun experience.
Like a cold turd that's been sitting in your backyard from your dog for 2 weeks.
Yes? Yeah, but I didn't pay $60 for that turd.
You can. I have plenty to say.
I'm sure you do.
Yes. Now, if you want to get into cons, 2 big cons for me. One was the visuals. What was that fire?
The fire effect was...
The fire was not fire. The fire was flashing lights that was supposed to be fire.
It was an expanding red orb. It wasn't with particle effects thrown on it. I mean, how much money? Sorry, Chris, you have more. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself here.
Yes, don't worry, Josh. I'll give you plenty of time to go on your tirade about why Mighty Number 9 is a Mighty Number 2 and everything in between.
Yeah, but showtime.
Again, on the visuals, your home base, which was what, Dr. Sansa's lab, Dr. Light's lab. I didn't know. They never really specified. It was like a demo. You had no background. You had the map, and you had what was kind of a see-through blue. It was like, is this the final thing? This is like something you see in a demo or a tech demo before the game's completed. And then, just like you said beforehand about the story, they had a lot of little tidbits like, oh, something's happening. And they could expand on it, but no. Maybe there's a backstory. It was supposed to be like a comic you're supposed to read, or a prologue that was supposed to be in a non-existent instruction booklet.
We were really banking on the anime being done by this point, guys.
I think so. And I think the anime, is it even still happening?
Let's get the wrong guys.
Yeah.
I hope nothing is happening.
Well, I'm convinced that nothing is happening because I've been trying to keep this game divorced from its Kickstarter. Because if you bring up the Kickstarter, it was the worst thing ever in the history of ever. I signed up. I paid money. The only reward I've gotten was actual download code for the game. I have not gotten any of my physical rewards. I haven't gotten any of the contact information. The way they will reach out to us and let us know, hey, here's what's happening, was horrible. I'm still
Like, how much did you back for?
I backed for 60 because I wanted the physical copy.
Okay.
Because I thought it'd be cool to have on my shelf with all the games I collect. While I don't regret backing for 60 because I was backing the project and not just buying the game, I could not justify buying this game for $20. It is not a $20 game. It is a $5 to $10 game, which is probably going to be on Steam in a couple of weeks. Maybe when they have a PlayStation Plus sale, because I played it on PlayStation, which brings it up to a point. You mentioned technical slowdown. I never encountered that. My game played flawlessly for me in terms of the technical aspect. I mean, yeah, the fire looked like absolute and yes, there were times where my jump failed because I mistimed my jump. But I enjoyed my gameplay. I didn't have any slowdowns. I didn't have any complications. I felt like, okay, this is impossible to do. It's just get good.
All right, cool.
Josh,
so
lay it on.
Oh, buddy. So first and foremost, I wanted to be said, I tried to do what Chris did and divorce the game from the Kickstarter, but this was one of the first examples of a well-known developer coming to Kickstarter. Was Tim Schafer before this?
Yes.
Tim Schafer was before this, but he was the first one. Wasn't he? Yeah,
he was one of the first major ones to have large success, yes.
So when a developer who had been long abused by the publishers, like, hey guys, I want to make a spiritual successor to the game you guys all love. Everybody goes, have our money. Like, yeah, this will probably be great. And then there were more warning signs and more warning signs. And then they showed the graphical style, and the graphical style looks like garbage. They maybe they had to do it for some reason. But a counterexample is Shantae Half Genie Heroes coming out in the next month. That looks gorgeous. It's cel-shaded 2D, looks amazing. That's a game I wish I had kickstarted because, go ahead.
Well, I think some of that's the difference between having 2D animation and actual 3D modeling and that cost that those 3D models add to the project. That's where I think at a fundamental base level, the artistic direction for Mighty Number 9 may not have been the best. Because for some of the concept art, had that actually been translated to turn again to a 2D game, I think it could look okay.
There was that one image they had
where he's jumping and he's shooting. That's the thing is, I feel like they misled with that concept art because why would you go 3D? I know making something go from a static picture to a moving picture is worlds of work. But you probably had a bunch of people experience with 2D animation. Did you really think 3D was better? I'm going to try to move away from the Kickstarter at this point because it will become just pure hate as opposed to well thought through hate. To front load this, as soon as I beat the game, without exaggeration, I synced the trophies and deleted the game from my system. It is gone because there were so many things that made me rage about this game. I'm going to go with the first one that didn't make my favorite thing about this game. And you guys didn't touch upon this, which surprised me. They gave the Mighties a strong amount of personality, a shocking amount of personality even. I'd say more than the main character. Something that I thought was interesting because it was obviously an homage to Mega Man, was I looked up, well, what boss has a weakness to what boss? Because I love playing them in that order, and I was shocked because I beat Longshot. Was that the guy?
Countershade.
Countershade.
I actually liked his level and his music.
His level was the highlight of that whole game. It was a non-standard level design that had a non-standard objective to get you to a boss. He was, to me, the best designed boss level whole game.
And it was voiced by Stephen Bloom.
There you go. Shout out to Nick on that one for telling me to play that level after the first one I tried was the Fireman. Pyro?
Pyro, yep.
That was the stupidest decision. The only way I could have done it worse is if I would have played the electric level first. But I'll get on to that. So when I beat him first, and then I think after that, Avi is who's weak against that, I was shocked to see Countershade show up and knock all these things out. So it was really impressive to me that they actually had continuity and characterization from these characters carry over into other levels. That was maybe the only good thing I thought was in this game, because going into it, you talked about how it was teaching you how to play these game mechanics like in the electric stage. They still weren't really teaching you, though, because they said do a crouching dash. But they had to show you the move, and they didn't differentiate it enough because when you're dashing, you still kind of look like you're crouching. I didn't realize they were two different moves because the animation's almost identical. And something that you'd brought up, Nick, that I also disagreed with, which was you said there were lives around where the instant death was. To me, that says they didn't want to QA out how to make it better. They just knew people would be dying here, so they gave them lives. And if it killed you more than once, the lives didn't come back. So if this was a problem because it was poorly designed, like it feels like they knew it was because they gave you more lives, well, you get one screw up and then you're kind of on your own. Sorry, buddy. I wish I'd known earlier in the game you could change your life count. I would have done that at the beginning of the game. You could bump your lives up to 9.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Me neither.
Yeah, I looked
Hard mode, man. That's how I'm doing it.
Absolutely not. 100% no.
I'd agree with you on that point, that I do think you're right, that it was essentially an apology of, hey, you know what, playtesting is coming back and it's not favorable. What can we do? We don't have time to rework these levels. What can we do to go ahead and ease the blow? That's fair criticism.
So, you guys were giving it 6, 7 out of 10, and you made valid points to that. I almost think that at times this game was technologically infeasible. Like, I did not feel it was technically sound at certain points. With all the instant death, the fact that the dashing was so crucial to it. Like, that was part of your character. You absorb stuff. And then you had the parts where you had to come to a dead stop. It completely went against the whole speed of it. I would have loved it if you could mow down enemies and zip through them, but it was a high risk, higher failure, because if you got hit when you were zipping around, that's what knocked you back super far. And because there was so much instant death falling, there was a whole level where if you fell onto the freeway, you were dead. What is the balance there? There's not even an invincibility frame. There's a you die frame.
I didn't have that hard of a time with Brandish's stage.
I actually didn't have that hard of a time with it, but the core idea is that you're always over lava the whole time.
True.
Every part of that was a moving platform, which I would have much preferred they took a Mega Man X, where if you fall down, you can jump back up real fast. If you could have even jumped up, level would have been better. There was so much instant death, and Mega Man 9 got criticized for this when it came out. Instant death is something that should be saved for near the end of the game, when you know the stakes are high, and when you want to be punished. You compared it to Mega Man 1, but Mega Man 1 focused on hairpin timing. I remember in one level, I think it was the ice level.
Iceman's level with the moving platforms that would shoot you.
There are moving platforms that could shoot you, and there was one part specifically that I raged against because there was a ladder that goes down, and there's spikes at the bottom. Why? Why would there be spikes there? I jumped down to try and go fast, and when I hit the bottom, there was no reason for me to know they were there. There was no reason for those spikes to be there.
Traps.
It was more unnecessary instant death that caused me to go back. And then you guys didn't even bring this one up. I will do another positive note, though. The weapon recharge was nice. The difference between having the not just all shooters, it made me think of Mega Man Zero when they started introducing him and they really varied things up. That reminded me of that. The fact you could charge some of the weapons. I know with the fire weapon you could do that. I'm just looking at my notes to try to make this not all pure hate.
I appreciate it.
I'm really trying, guys.
I know you're holding back here.
Oh my word. Why were there even lives in this game? What was the point of that? I mean, it was trying to combine two dissonant things. I'm going to compare actually two different facets of Super Meat Boy. Super Meat Boy was brutally hard at points. The whole game was instant death. Also note, I got the I'm a Golden God achievement in that game because I loved it to death. It balanced the difficulty with the reward tremendously, except near the end, which was one of your complaints about it, Nick, where the levels became overly long. The levels, which had previously taken anywhere between 10 and 20 seconds, now were taking 90 seconds to complete, and still instant death. Where in this, the levels could be, I don't know, 3 to 10 minutes, depending on how terrible you were. Sometimes I was quite terrible. And if you lost all your lives because you were getting used to the instant death shenanigans, you gotta know where the enemies are popping out. Then you get to the boss. These bosses they did have a pattern, but some of the pattern was Mega Man difficult. And I say that in a positive way because you really had to learn it, and some of those frames were real unforgiving. But if you'd used up all your lives, it kicked you back to the beginning. And why would you want to go through all that frustration again? It made me so... I still got through it really fast. Nick actually said, maybe you should space it out a bit. He said, maybe if you put it back to back here in a month and a half, you're just going to be hating on this game during the podcast. And I went, probably. And that's where we are. But I knew if I put it down, I wouldn't come back to it. They had a lot of attempts at good design there. They did. But I don't think that... And this is just the game design. I haven't even gotten into the story. The game design, the levels were just not put together well. The bosses were decent, but the bosses were difficult. There is a trope. Easy level, difficult boss, difficult level, easy boss. The comparisons being Mario levels are harder, the bosses are easier. Kirby levels are easier, the bosses are harder. This game had BS levels followed by difficult bosses. That was a bad combination to the point where at the end of the game, when I fought against Trinity, the boss was actually just hard. Like, the Trinity levels weren't even that bad designed. They were actually pretty decent. But I was so incensed against this game by the time I got to it. Like, this is ridiculous. I am done with this. This boss is bananas. And then when I died the second time, I went, this boss is actually well designed. I just hate this game. So I did try to reflect on what could have been better. But if we're going to other malarkey instant death, for Countershade, why did he have instant death in his level? Why did he have those little instant death wires? What was the point? They could have just hurt you.
He's an assassin.
Someone pointed out that it was weird to have instant death in every level except that one. So they said, yeah, we're going to spread the poop over here too.
Yeah, like there was no point. And the only way that it showed you, and this was kind of like a trial by fire, but in a game that really didn't need trial by fire, was the only way it gave you an idea that it was instant death was purple was instant death.
Yes.
Nothing else about those said they would instantly kill you. Those tripwires.
What's interesting there is the final stage was almost entirely purple for the background and the overall ambiance. That's kind of a neat little thing.
Chris, did you have more on that? Because I think I'm about to transition to the story part.
Go ahead and transition to the story part.
So, going back to the final level, when you beat Trinity, this goes perfectly with what you guys were saying about there's a story we weren't told because Trinity turns back into a U-sized robot. When was this a thing? And the guy who is central to the plot, Dr. White, right? The Afro. How apathetic was he? His voice actor was bored the whole game.
Folded in.
He didn't care. And
Sansa was the one who was basically leading you around the whole time, and he's just over there being the Deus Ex Machina and guarding his little hollow chamber.
Yeah.
Got a new challenge for you, buddy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and he was so unnecessary. He was so doofy. And I'm going to just go back because this is plot related. That call level was not great. It was bad on a lot of levels because I did not like the change in gameplay because they'd have you 8 levels where you were doing this dash mechanic and now you gotta slowly knock these things out. The boss was completely unrelated to how you'd done things previously. I know what they were trying to do. I think they failed.
I have to disagree. I actually like the call level. I like the fact that it wasn't, okay, run and gun and kill everything. Now it's almost like not full on stealth, but you got to be mindful of what you're doing. You have to be careful of how you go through the level. You can't just kill everything.
I like the reduced power, but I didn't like the fact that you couldn't dash to absorb. That was my biggest
That's
beef.
what killed...
Actually, I like that because that was made her different. If she could dash to absorb, what makes her different from Beck?
But you'd stun an enemy in 2 hits, and then it'd just be, alright, and shoot him again, and again, and again. You'd end up firing 8 shots at an enemy.
You still had to kill them to get past certain points. So if they would have just had some kind of, I know it didn't fit the aesthetic of the game, but a quote-unquote execution move that served the same basic function, because if you still had to kill everything, now you turned what was supposed to be a real speedy, jittery process of stun them, absorb them. You had to do what Nick said, where you just keep pop, pop, pop. And you had to do it. If you didn't have to do it, if you could sneak by it.
You could sneak by some of the guys. There were a handful that you did have to do, which I built as like mid-bosses for the rooms you were in. The one complaint I did have with the call level, I know it's supposed to be optional, but they took that to a whole new level. There was nothing of value in that stage or that story. Nothing of value.
Was that an optional level when you go to the prison?
Yes.
I didn't have to do that?
Nope. You could have just went straight on and completed with Beck's story.
We're going to pause the podcast here so that Josh can go ahead and swear for a couple of minutes.
Oh, my word. No. I really thought you had to do that.
I didn't realize this either. I thought it was mandatory too.
I thought you had to. I'm going to take you at your word for this one, Chris.
There was no reason to. I did it because I liked it, but there was no reason to. You could have gone right on and do the next part in Beck's story.
But speaking of Beck's story, what was the point of the red herring that was the Dr. Wily dude? Because corrupt corporate executives, he's the reason that it all went down, right? Because he flipped a switch, even though Afro guy said, don't flip the switch. And then they're like, this is obviously the bad guy we locked up. We spend 8 stages eventually getting to this guy. He goes, are you guys serious? This has nothing to do with me. And Afro guy goes, yeah, this is kind of my fault, sort of. Story's over. That was it. This story was so completely, nobody wanted to be there. Nobody cared. And it seemed like the main character, he was confused the whole way through. His creator didn't ever explain anything to him. Call was just kind of there. I almost feel bad I didn't play the Vermilion Destroyer level. Was that any good? Did anybody play that?
I did play that. It was alright. I felt that the whole Ray character was like, let's take Zero, make him darker and edgier, female, and put him in this game.
Ray was female?
Yes. Ray's a girl.
I was so disconnected and disenchanted from the game at that point that I couldn't even care. But let's see, was there any more points? Yeah, I had to give this a 4 out of 10, like max. I'm shocked because that's actually higher than I thought you would say. The game played, and I got through it, and some of the music was actually pretty good.
I loved Counter Shade's theme. The boss theme actually grew on me over time. And do we even need to talk about the ending theme? Although I do want to say this. The Mighty Number 9 theme, like the actual main theme, it was cool as an intro theme, but it was way overused.
Yes.
Way overused. It seemed like anytime I'm start position, let's play this 3-note piece repeatedly.
It's like they had enough money to commission a short jingle from Manami and Matsune, and then they said, let's just ride this horse into the sunset.
Repeat. But I'm really trying to think of other positive things. Okay, this ain't a positive. I'm sorry, guys. I wish they would have done the Mighty Number thing better. I couldn't get to my name. I tried. I even went back into my email and looked up my number.
Did you know you could skip it?
You
could jump around 10,000.
I knew I could skip forward every 10,000, but my number was like 19,000. And you were supposed to be able to navigate by number. They gave you the option, but I couldn't get it to work.
Do you really want to see your name in a video game like this?
I want to know that
I paid money for it. I want to show.
Do I want to be associated with this? This is not something I would put on my resume. But was I part in this train wreck? Yes. We are all going down together. And luckily, I didn't actually pay for any physical stuff. I got the gold skin, ironically. Yeah, that was worth my $60.
I'm thinking of how all these Kickstarters are always doing these pushes for fan art before the game comes out, and I'd just love to kind of see the commission of Mighty Number 9 fan art and just see at the point of release where it turns from being fan art to hate art. I could see Josh creating like a Rule 34 style site just around hate art of I hate this thing that people do, and here's that media property that
all you draw is hate.
I recently learned what the phrase "guro" meant, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, and okay, so you guys know, and when you said that, I'm like, that's immediately where my mind went, and it's a little dark even for me, because I went, we're going to just go ahead and glaze on past that. But I did see a picture, because speaking of hate art, it had a picture of Beck with like his arm and leg missing, and he's going, "I'm going to have an anime. Give me 6 more months. It's going to be great, guys." And when it came out, all I could think of was just put 2 in his head like this.
Oh my god!
The game,
It's like the Penny Arcade where they execute Sonic from Sonic Boom.
yes, exactly. Just end it. Gotta go fast. Now, Nick asked if they come out with another game that addresses all the issues that were brought up, would it be something I'd consider? And like you'd said earlier, Chris, only if it went on sale for about $5. This eradicated any goodwill I have for him creating stuff for a while.
Kiji and Fune's name is Mud.
Unfortunately. So does anybody have any wrap up on this? Sorry to make it totally down, but that's why I wanted to put this one first.
I liked what I played, but my god, was it flawed.
Yeah.
But I liked what I played.
It was okay-ish.
It was meh.
Kinda. Some of the time.
Put that on the box. It was okay some of the time. So moving on to our next topic. Recently, I wrapped up Xenoblade Chronicles X, and I found out at a show that we were all at somewhat recently that, Chris, you'd put 200 hours into this game?
Oh yeah.
And Nick, you put 100 hours in when you beat it.
Yep.
I myself beat the game at 50 hours. Now, to explain this, I rushed through the game till I got my suit, and then from there I never got out of my suit. So I was level like 55 at the end of the game. But because of the way I played it, I don't think I ever learned how to play it. I never knew how to use consumable items till the last fight. Not an exaggeration. But if you think about it, when did they explain it? They give you a 75-page manual, and they say, good luck. Xenoblade Chronicles, I felt, on the other hand, even though some of the mechanics were a little obtuse, what was it? You have to stagger to knock down.
Stagger, topple, and then...
I think it was
what's
just
the third
stagger
one?
and topple.
No, there's a third one, but I can't remember what it is.
Bind? No, bind is in
No,
the
bind is something. Bind is when you're the skull.
But they explained it in Xenoblade Chronicles. Even though it didn't make a lot of sense, they still explained it. Whereas in this game, I never knew the right way to use overdrive. When you got out of your skull, I never knew the right way to... Was that also called overdrive?
Yes.
And then when I went online, because I found out there was an enemy with 100 million health, I found somebody who did 99,999,999 out of their skull. They were doing 1 million a pop. I have no idea how they were doing this. So let's go ahead and go around from more experience, which would be Nick. And Chris, I'm guessing you knew this game inside and out, what with 200 hours. Nick, you did not use the skills much, so you, I would imagine, have more insight into this game in general. Like, you did more stuff.
I did more stuff than you, but compared to Chris, I am a neophyte.
All right, so
Let's start with Chris, I think.
Are you sure? I want you to go ahead and lay out what you have, and then I can
Okay,
add
sure.
to that and expunge everything that I know about the game and how much I loved it.
Okay, so the lack of using a skull was something...
I would like one quick. I did like the game. The game had amazing music. I thought that the scope of the game was incredible. I thought that there could have been a really good story.
This is Josh's tone he uses when he's still ultimately unhappy. I feel like the promo picture for this episode just needs to be Josh kind of frowning into a mirror like, I didn't get what I wanted.
But it wasn't that, because we even mentioned going in. When we talked about this a long time ago, don't go in expecting Xenoblade Chronicles. Both you and Chris said this.
Don't play Xenoblade Chronicles X expecting Xenoblade Chronicles.
Right,
The X
yeah.
is a big difference.
The story could have been, it was exactly what Chris said. He said, I thought it would go a certain way. It went a different way, which was his, this is all spoilers if you guys haven't figured it out. They explained nothing. If you got to the end of that game not knowing, I would have destroyed that game. 100 hours and that's what they gave you. 200 hours and they said, to be continued.
I was reading this criticism about like the summer blockbuster and how it shifted to being like a 2-act story, and that you have the heroes and then the villains and then there's lasers and then nothing ever really happens or is settled. It's just all a setup for a CGI fight. And I feel like that's kind of what Xenoblade Chronicles X's story was. We're gonna find the life hold. Fight, fight, fight. Okay, that's the end. And then you have the little Easter egg snippet where the life hold is actually not existent and it's been destroyed for years.
For
And,
real, so long.
okay, great. That wasn't really a climax. There wasn't really a rising action here. There wasn't a denouement where everything was wrapped up. This didn't really feel like a story. Other than that, it's a thing that happened that was written down.
And that actually brings up another good question. They talk about like the Enlightened One or the Great One or whatever. Do they explain that at all? Does he just go inside this thing they for some reason called the Vita, and then you fight, and then the guy becomes a super monster chimera thing, and then did I miss that?
Not really.
Awesome.
I saw this meme on V where it was basically just Alma going like, "It's Mira, I ain't gotta explain."
Exactly.
I love that. That's basically the game in a nutshell.
But it was so much fun, and there's something I want to talk about the story, but I know Nick was like, "So it's your turn."
No, let's just do this freeform.
Yeah,
Okay,
no, this
cool.
is working out.
Well,
this
then,
is working.
I got to comment on what I told you originally because I really feel. I forget what chapter it was. This is all spoiler, by the way. But I think it was after chapter 6 where you go into this valley where you're supposed to find this fallen skull. And all the monsters there are infused with this like biomass and makes them really berserk and chaotic. I thought that was where the story was going to go, where that was going to become a major thing. And how come people were disappearing, how come monsters were kept going out of control and stuff like that. They completely abandoned that for this like pseudo-gangster syndicate.
Well,
which was terrible.
And that brings up another point. So at the end of that chapter, after you're done beating the giant infected lion thing, a giant dragon comes down. They don't tell you what it is.
You never see it again.
You do. I looked it up. That's the Telethia. That's the level 99 thing. You beat it and you didn't know that.
No, I don't know.
And that's the thing. They're like, what's that? I don't know. Okay, cool. And then they just go about their
Probably because I encountered it like 100 hours later. By that point, I was like, I don't remember what happened in that part.
I will say one positive thing about the story. I thought the reveal at the end of chapter 3 about how you're in fact a mimeosome and you're not a human was well done. Like, I thought it had serious weight for me when I thought,
yeah, that
Tatsu, you just could make me lose my arm for your bull.
That actually at first upset me because this is something personal about me. I'm a roboticist. I do not, or whatever it is for racist robots, I do not like robots. Yes, I am not fan of robotics.
Chill, David Duke.
I know. I don't know why. I just feel that, I'm a robot. That's bullshit. This is garbage. But as it went on...
How does this apply to your thoughts on Mighty Number 9, if I can interject?
Well, in Mighty Number 9, you're a robot. There's never you're actually human. Hell, even with Mega Man, the whole concept is he's like more than human. No, he's a robot. He knows he's a robot. Sure, he's trying to do the right thing.
Are you telling him that Mega Man knows his place, so he's a good robot?
Would you say
Chris?
Would you say he's a partial human? Would you say he's maybe 3/5 of a human?
Yeah, is he like
yes.
Is he like an octo-android?
Robo Lincoln's going to bring him freedom.
Wait, was Lincoln a robot?
It's the robotization proclamation.
Oh god, yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, I brought it home.
Oh geez.
Sorry, I completely... I agree with Nick on this one, where I remember actually telling him, I'm like, whoa, you're a robot. I kind of didn't see that coming. You kind of did because you knew that countdown was for something.
Yep.
But,
and it wasn't just like, the thing is going to blow up and then we're all like, well, why would we all be dead? Because we're all operating our dolls. It was redeemed when it turned out that, it's because we're all living in the life hole pod and we're using these as like an extension of ourselves. When they told me that, I was all in. I was like, that is excellent. I love that idea. I love that concept. And then they revealed that, we're actually all inside this data chip as opposed to it being an actual life pods.
The issue I had with that at the end, and this is being petty, was the reveal that Alma was actually a Xeno form. I was wondering, I actually had to message Nick and go, does this mean it's like a prequel to Xenogears? Like, she looks real similar to somebody from that game at this point. It feels like this big reveal nobody really cared about because what you really told us was there was 20 million people who aren't actually here. Like, you have completely overshadowed the reveal that she's an alien by the fact that everybody's gone.
I called out the reveal she was an alien way early. I was like, yep, she's not human. There's something else going on. And then they did a reveal. I'm like, yep, called it.
Whatever.
And then they throw it to shape, and I'm like, I'm not really feeling her design. Basically, they made her a blue version of her Mimizone as opposed to something else.
Yeah, that was kind of weird too. Like, they didn't even go off character. They just put some extra stuff on it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, it turns out you're actually from Pandora, aren't you?
Dun, dun, dun.
Would have been great if they'd gone Galaxy Quest and just made her completely non-human.
No, that would have been hilarious.
That's what I really would have liked that, where if she came out and she looked like a leprechaun or something.
Or like a really big fat person with a beard. I was just pretending to be sexy, guys.
Catfish. If she would have come out as a catfish,
Yes.
oh, that would have been
A literal
amazing.
catfish alien.
Literal
That would have been
catfish.
the best. And it really only reinforced the idea of, so Nick, you'd mentioned early on, I asked, why is your character even in this game? It's my guess because it couldn't be Alma because she was an alien. I'm not sure why it couldn't have been Lynn, though.
Because then you couldn't have been a complete asshole at every moral choice available. Should I console this crying barista, or should I tell her, yeah, you're totally fired, JoJo?
That was funny.
I love that.
It was funny, but it didn't have a point.
Super fire.
There was also
It was
this.
a comedic aspect.
It was
didn't-
funny.
It
It was
didn't
funny.
adhere to the main story, but it was still fun to do.
It was.
There were also some terrible dark moments. Like there's the one where you're tracking down the xenomorph assassin guy. You have this fellow who's racist and he lures a couple of a couple of the aliens outside.
That was probably the darkest side story I've done in that game, and I loved it.
Yeah, the choice. Oh my god! I think he made the choice to let them die. So because it's
You
basically
let him die?
so it's set up.
I got something
For,
worse.
for the
I got something
listener,
worse.
for the listeners to set up the stage here, there's 3 aliens there. You're essentially outside the city, and you're with this man who wants to kill the aliens to teach them a lesson. And you're set up with a choice: do you stop him and intervene, or do you just let's wait and see what happens? I think that's actually how they set it
Yeah,
up.
no,
Just
that's
wait
how
and see
That's
what
how I set it up.
happens.
I did intervene,
Okay.
Okay,
but I intervened in a tuxedo because I did the wedding sequence earlier.
that's beautiful.
God.
I approve. Well, with that, you can, after he kills the first one, then you can just continue to wait and see what happens. I saw the video of this, and it's just like, yep, let's see what happens. Well, looks like the filthy aliens learned their place. That's kind of interesting and terrible, I guess, that they gave you the freedom to do that.
While I went Paragon route, I love that was an option, that it wasn't just...
Well, it's an option that actually affected something,
Yes.
as opposed to most other things in that game.
That's where I think they redeemed the having you just create that avatar thing rather than have it be a main character. Can you see Lynn just letting the aliens die? How would they write that dialogue for her?
Can we talk about the helicopter sequence? I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I'm not sure.
There was a side quest where it was somebody's team. His name's not Carlos, I'm going to call him Carlos. It's him and this girl, and they were fighting about repairing the helicopter because they're trapped on Noctillion.
Oh,
And
this is sounding
you
familiar.
were sent out to go get them.
Mhm.
And he runs off. The guy runs off, and the girl is there. Like, I don't know what to do. Quick, can you fix it? So you have to connect the red wire or the blue wire.
Mhm.
Depending on how you connect it, they go home safely, and you get your reward. I didn't do it right.
Mhm.
They died.
Whoa.
And that weighed on me. That weighed on me for days. Like, legitimately, like, oh my god, I killed these fictional people because I hastily did a repair job on a helicopter.
Woo.
Here's a positive, though. You got double the payout when you go back to the guy.
Well, here's their salary for next month. Good job, I guess.
Yeah, okay. Man, talk about lemonade out of lemons. Nick, you look like you had something on that.
Well, I think that's a really interesting one because that's such an age-old trope about, oh no, which wire do I cut to defuse the evil bomb that the Soviets have planted? It's been there for so long. When it got transported into games, we were always used to it being kind of structured like it was in movies and television shows where, hey, it doesn't matter, just pick which one. Like Illusion of Gaia.
I was about to say that.
Your friend Eric is strapped to the bomb and you have to go ahead and choose which wire. It doesn't matter which one. Everything's going to be okay. To have this happen where there's actual consequences for that was a really nice touch, I thought.
Yes.
And it was really interesting in some of these side missions. This game had a penchant from going from not serious to super serious. There was a side quest in Sylvalum, where this girl goes, I really want cake. Like, okay,
Oh,
I'll
yes.
go get cake.
Yes.
And when you come back, it's like, they've been abducted. You go into one of the caves, she's like, I watched my CO get skinned alive. Whoa! What? When you go finish up the mission, thanks for the cake, but I don't think anything will ever be the same. So is this cake mine? Or like, what do you do
need
with
counseling,
it?
but can I eat this?
Yeah, it had these weird whiplash moments. You're laughing because I'm guessing you know.
This is a lemon cake, but let's try and make some lemonade out of this cake.
I guess.
Oh.
Lord. So we're just waddling around the story.
But what you called out there, I think, and with these anecdotes, I think is one of the key selling points for it, is the main story was largely forgettable, but they did do a great job in both building the alien cultures, the villain aliens, kind of the ones with the hippopotamus ears, I forget their
ganglion?
name. Yes, the
Yeah.
ganglion. When you get onto their ship and you start doing their side quests and are introduced to their culture, they do a good job of world building there, and the scenarios that they wrote for these side quests like that one where her CO was skinned alive, they really did make the world seem alive. They nailed that.
Yeah, the world is incredibly immersive. And that's where I was kind of disappointed in that the world, it felt like you went into a world. You're not slowly going into incrementally stronger places. You're seeing level 60 stuff as soon as you're dropped in.
Yep.
If you go across this giant monkey, he will wreck you. There is no two ways about it. So it really felt like an immersive world, but it didn't really feel like they capitalized on using the story to help you get involved in the world. I don't know. That's just my opinion because, again, at the end, you're fighting some bullfrog dude in a giant scale that they never explained that seemed to revolve around a religion they never explained.
This is for ordering frog legs.
Yeah, I guess. And I don't know. It never came together.
The main story was there.
Yeah.
But I think the developer's original intent was to create this world, which they did a phenomenal job creating this vast world that is alive, it's functioning. You literally feel like you're the alien invading a home planet as opposed to being on your home planet. And the main story took a big backseat. The side quests, though, there were a lot of good side quest stories. Like, talk about those. With the cake, that was great. With the racist guy killing off the aliens, that was great. How about the one where you had to go and help the Manon develop a clothesline?
Yeah,
so you had to go and ask women their measurements.
That was fun.
They had a lot of plot that was also really interesting. There was the one with the emotions too. The Manon had that as well. They were completely and totally alien, and they did that really well. And it's funny. This is how I know I didn't play it right, and this is why I give this game way more leeway than I did Mighty Number 9, because I feel like I did Mighty Number 9 right. Xenoblade Chronicles X, I did not do right, and I feel bad for that. Because I never even unlocked the ganglion as people I could interact with.
You done.
Oh, yeah.
I burned all the way through that game. I didn't know how to play it. I didn't. They didn't explain how
You know how to get to the end?
Yeah, only by knuckling down and barreling through it. You know what I did? When I got a Skell, I leveled up to level 30 or 40, whatever it took to get the next level. Then I put a G-Buster on it, and I rode that till the end of the game. That's what I did, because I read that made it go quick, and it did.
That's right. You bought the wind cannon.
Exactly. And I had no idea how to play the game when I got to the final boss.
So then I guess this is a useless question for you. Which class did you like to play?
The one that was at the very top. I don't even remember. Samurai Gunner?
That's the one that I made use of. I don't know if it was at the top or not.
That's what I transitioned onto because I was reading the descriptions, and this one said it was heavily offense-based, and that didn't work for me. So I went with what Nick said, and I still didn't know what I was doing.
Here's a question for you, Chris. Could the main character ever start the stagger? Because that was a big frustration I had with Shulk and Xenoblade Chronicles, and the way that you break down those enemies to stagger, then topple, then break, I think may have been the third one. Then in Chronicles X, I could never stagger. I could never look up a class that seemed to stagger enemies. Was there just a class that had that ability that I'm missing, or were you always reliant on the NPCs to do
No, it was
that?
based on your skills. I remember there was the color-coded ones were the ones that triggered the abilities. And for me, I let my team do the dirty work. I just the class I played was called the Psycho Launcher, where the guy had the two turrets on the side and he had the beam saber. That was just so much fun to play. You just whip around. You have guys shooting and you're just hanging back. You can run in and dive in. It's something like out of anime or you're flipping around. So I'll be doing attacks. Sure, maybe I'll get an occasional topple in. Maybe I'll get an occasional stagger in. My team's handling that. I got Elma running in, knocking guys down. I've got Lynn tanking. I'm good.
That was my frustration, though, is that they didn't seem to do the stagger by default. I was so used to it. In Xenoblade Chronicles, that's always how I launch. It's all right, I got this. Now, Ryan, you're going to go ahead and topple them, and we're going to get this going. And in Xenoblade Chronicles X, I'd be like, all right, Lynn, Elma, either of you, are you going to stagger them? All right, this is going to take a while if you're not going to stagger them. We really need to stagger them so I can topple them. Come on, guys, stagger them. It didn't happen.
You could change their battle voices, which would change basically what their focus was. So maybe you could have tried that. I didn't really care too much about the toppling, making a focus to do that. It was kind of like a bonus because I guess the way I played, I was either steamrolling through guys, whipping around, looking cool, or we had the strategy and it worked. There was very few times where on foot it was complicated. In the Skell was a bit more complicated because you do still have those same effects, but the overdrive and the I guess, like the cockpit mode. Speaking of the cockpit mode, you did not have any control over. You just kind of went into it when you either did like a critical or you did something else.
And it just refreshed all your abilities.
Which was great. It was like, cool, my G-Buster's down. Oh, bam! Sweet. Bam in the cockpit. Let's go. Blast repeatedly.
Yeah, that was kind of what my whole strategy was. So
I like the cockpit mode. I just wish it was some control to it. The overdrive was fun, though.
So one thing I would ask if you would acquiesce to is, do you think that the actual gameplay part was well explained outside of text? Just walls of text. And you're a guy who put a ton of time in. So when I talk about chaining overdrive together to build up damage, you actually know how to do that and what that means. I have no idea. Did you find that they explained that in some way in the game?
Well, here's a fundamental thing. They do hint at it in the game if you read the text, but it's hard to read because it's tiny. You have the 75-book manual that you can access from the Wii, which is counterintuitive at first, but when you know how to use it, it works. But for me, I just did it hands-on. It's why I had 200 hours. I probably could have had 100 hours if I actually did everything by the book instead of self-experimenting and hanging out in Noctilum listening to the music for 30 hours because the music there is just beautiful.
One by one.
I have actually pulled up that music while I've been at work before. The music was phenomenal.
Yes,
the music was phenomenal. The character design was the enemy design in particular. I really liked everything about that game except the part where it was the game itself.
What you called out there, Chris, I guess is my big frustration. Is I feel like there were opportunities where they could have designed some of the quests to teach you some of the game's mechanics. One that calls to mind is like how you have to do those quests to go ahead and get the skill.
Yeah.
Where a lot of those quests are honestly just, they expose you to the different facets of the different guilds that there are, the Harriers, the Interceptors, and so on. But they could have used those to go ahead and teach you instead, hey, this is what's going to happen with using your skill in combat, blah, 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 blah. It would be a pain to just be scrolling through that text explaining what's happening, but I feel like they could space that text out through those different objectives of, all right, hey, now we're going to teach you how to use this with blah, blah, blah. Like I remember in Mech Warrior 2, you start off with a tutorial mission where basically the NCO is yelling at you about how to control your mech, and your whole thing is, all right, this is going to teach you the controls, and if you don't do what he says, he's going to start yelling at you and about what an idiot you are, and you're going to fail this intro level. I feel like something like that with the Skell would have been helpful to go ahead and explain, all right, this is what's going to happen, and this is how you do what you need to do.
The Skell or the Overdrive, honestly, because I feel like I missed tremendous opportunities because I never knew how to use the Overdrive. Watching the people use the Ghostwalker ability to chain together these enormous combos, I was doing something wrong, so very wrong, and I never knew what.
The game definitely could have done a better job explaining things to you. Of course, I also feel that putting the manual in the game and as a separate thing in the Wii, not exactly the best move. It worked, but for me, it's always better to have it in the game as part of something you're doing and something you can quickly reference in the game instead of having to leave the game to look at something else.
Yep. I have never seen a game well reviewed, and this is from talking to a guy who develops indie games, following some Steam Greenlight games. No game is ever super well reviewed when they give you a document in the game and say, read how to play. It's just not. But anyways, let's go ahead and give our short final thoughts on this. I'll start since mine are the least informed on this one. I thought the game was good. It wasn't Xenoblade Chronicles good. They said it wasn't going to be Xenoblade Chronicles going in. I hope they were lying. I will learn to listen better in the future. It was a good game, but it wasn't a game for me. It was still a solid 8 out of 10, but it's because for me it was a genre mismatch. I think if I had really been into it, I would have rated it higher. Still not perfect because the story I still don't think I would have liked even if I would have dug the game. Nick?
I really loved it. The experience that you have when you fly for the first time and you're flying out of New Los Angeles and going up out there is going to be in my mental list of just those great gaming moments that make me happy that I chose this hobby. It's like Contra 4 whenever you ride the missile up and then down into the ground where it just sticks with you as a memorable experience. There were things I wish they had done better. As far as the mechanics, I think that I should have tried to go ahead and explore those more like Chris did. But I'm happy for the time I spent with the game, and I'll definitely be excited to see what Monolith comes up with next.
Chris?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. The only thing that I didn't like was the fact that the story went with the B-side of the Syndicate team as opposed to the Black Mass that's corrupting things. Outside of that, pretty much everything else I loved. The music was solid. The gameplay was solid. You got to finally use skills, which was something I was so mad about in the original Xenoblade Chronicles. You didn't get to fight in a mech, even though you fought mechs. Now you can, and it was glorious. I loved it. I really just cannot sing enough praise about this game. It is easily one of my favorite games on the Wii U. A great RPG experience, probably one of the best RPGs on the Wii U that I've played. I can't recommend it enough.
I was just trying to think of more RPGs I've played on the Wii U.
Sharp FE and...
About to say, that's about all I could think of. Well, anyways, a ringing endorsement, Chris.
Yeah, Wii U, which is on the way out thanks to Nintendo's mysterious console.
Which will be a topic in the future, I'm sure. But that about does it for this episode. I would like to thank Chris for being on.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
And Nick for being on.
This was a blast. Thanks, guys.
Not a problem. Don't forget to hit us up on the socials. And until next time, this is Co-Opinions.